Oh no! Come visit me right now!
William exclaimed in a panicked voice. I could almost see William's face on the other end of the phone. I heard that my husband William got into a car accident on his way home from work and was taken to the hospital. But the fact that he's calling like this suggests he's clear-headed, and I don't feel any immediate danger.
Sarah, you gonna answer? Yeah. What's with that nonchalant response? Your husband's in trouble.
Even though he says it's a crisis, he sure sounds lively and mad. Honestly, I'm more flabbergasted than worried. After all, just last month, I was the one in the hospital. During that time, William didn't come to visit me even once. William. I wonder if you know the anxiety of being alone in a hospital bed? Now you're gonna experience it. This might be a good time for you to reflect on your selfish nature. I'm Sarah Smith. I turned 27 this year. I married William 2 years ago, when we worked at the same place. We currently live in an apartment as a couple.
I'm thinking of buying a house someday and raising kids, you know?
Yeah. Holding a beer, William talks about his dreams, and all I can do is nod with an unsure look on my face. I had doubts about getting a mortgage with William's income. And if we were going to raise kids, I'd probably need to start working to help with the finances. On top of that, William can be quite childish at times. I suspect he'll leave all the child rearing to me. Considering this, I couldn't feel very positive about either idea. We go shopping once a week, heading to the supermarket in William's car. We bulk buy meat and veggies that can be frozen, so on the way back, my hands are always full.
You think we're spending too much? It's because we're bulk buying, so it's gonna be this much.
After glancing at the bill, William checks the amount and starts walking out.
Wait up!
I was frantic. I thought he'd help carry at least half of the stuff. The cashier, too, looked surprised as she watched William leave.
Oh, William!
I walk out, carrying packages in both my arms. William doesn't match my pace. He moves ahead on his own, leaving the store and walking through the parking lot. I also stepped outside. With the packages, I can't see my feet clearly. Stumbling, I follow behind William. Just as our car came into view, I suddenly felt a sharp pain. I had tripped over the curb. My vision tilted. And my bags spilled everywhere. I stumbled back a few steps and found myself sitting on the ground.
Ouch!
I groaned. Only then did William turn around. There wasn't a trace of sympathy on his face. Just anger.
What the hell are you doing? Making such a mess. Hurry up and pick them up. I can't. My foot hurts, I can't move. What?
His voice filled with disbelief. Mustering all the strength I could, I said.
Call an ambulance. This pain isn't normal. It feels like my toes are shattered. Don't be so dramatic.
William just smirked and didn't do anything. With no other choice, I used my smartphone to call the ambulance myself. When the ambulance arrived, William's demeanor changed completely and he began to show concern.
Sarah, are you okay?
Yeah. I wasn't pleased to hear his condescending tone now. A burly paramedic put me on a stretcher to transport me.
Is your husband coming with you?
No.
I'll go home to get her insurance card and wallet.
Even as he said this, William was picking up the scattered meat and vegetables around. The paramedic looked slightly exasperated, but they loaded me into the ambulance. Inside, the moving ambulance jostled quite a bit. I was fully conscious, so the paramedic asked me how I got injured. I gritted my teeth against the pain as I answered their questions. All the while, I just wanted the pain to stop and hoped to get to the hospital and start treatment as soon as possible. Upon arrival at the hospital, I was immediately taken to the X-ray room. The diagnosis turned out to be fractures in both legs.
I just tripped.
I exclaimed in shock. I had panicked and called an ambulance because of the pain, but I truly hadn't thought it was this serious.
Look here. Your bones are completely shattered. No way!
I was at a loss for words looking at my own X-ray.
If you've been doing heavy lifting regularly or just the wear and tear of daily activities, bones can get fatigued. That's what can lead to fractures with just a little incident.
The doctor's tone was sympathetic. In the end, I was admitted to the hospital and waited with a nurse for William. However, William never showed up.
Excuse me for a moment.
I asked the nurse before calling William on his smartphone. William answered in his usual tone.
Sarah, huh? What happened? My leg, it's broken. So, I'm gonna be hospitalized. Can you ask William to handle the paperwork? What? That's a hassle. A hassle? I'm seriously injured here.
I felt sad. Even with such a severe injury, William didn't seem to care about me. He hadn't even looked for my insurance card. He said he forgot it while putting groceries in the fridge.
All right. I'll just go and get it done, okay?
William ended the call clearly in a bad mood. Would he really come in that state? I felt uneasy, but after some delay, William did show up. He had a forced smile on his face.
Sorry about all this. So, the hospitalization procedures are... You can do it right here.
A nurse explained to him, and William took care of my hospital admission. But that was it. William never visited me again until the day I was discharged. I never thought he'd be so indifferent. I was disheartened throughout my hospital stay. I was in a shared room with 2 other women. Both were elderly and far kinder than William.
Here you go, Sarah. Thank you so much.
They shared a piece of pear with me. The crisp texture and the rich juice overwhelmed me. The sweet flavor filled my mouth, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face.
What's wrong?
Nothing, it's just... I wiped away the tears with the back of my hand. I tried to hide my emotions and continued eating the pear. Why can others be so kind when William is so cold? In the end, William never visited me, not even once. Other patients had visitors almost every day, so I felt out of place. All the hospital gowns and such were for rent. Just like the beds, they had that hospital smell, and they weren't comfortable.
You'll be able to leave the day after tomorrow. Really?
I was beaming with joy. I was growing tired of William, but the thought of going home was exhilarating. When I called William to tell him about my discharge, I got a sigh of annoyance.
Just call a cab and get yourself home. I'm swamped with work.
I'll do that. I had given up expecting much from William. So I wasn't shocked, just overwhelmed with the question of why I ever married such a man. On the day of my discharge, I am following William's suggestion, I took a taxi home. The state of the house was shocking.
What's all this?
Clothes were thrown all over the room. Dishes and instant noodle cups littered the table. William had neglected house chores while I was away.
Am I supposed to clean this up?
I was taken aback. But I couldn't stand there forever. I got home around 2:30 p.m. William usually gets home around the same time, so I needed to tidy up and prepare dinner by then. I sighed and checked the fridge. Empty. The grocery store was a bit far, so I'd grab something from the local convenience store and run the washing machine in the meantime. My mind was a mess. Still, my experience as a housewife came to the rescue. As it began to get dark outside and William returned, the house had regained its normalcy. Seeing it, William merely remarked,
"Oh, it's clean."
That was it. No words of appreciation. I realized that to William, I was just expected to take care of the house, and any lapse would earn his criticism.
This is a convenience store meal, huh? There weren't any fresh veggies or anything, so it couldn't be helped.
Even so, William looked displeased. And so, I returned to my usual role as a full-time housewife. My doctor had warned me against any strenuous activities, but William, as always, wouldn't help with things like carrying the trash. I wondered if I'd end up with another fracture, but continued doing the chores anyway. The next big incident happened a month later.
It's urgent. Come visit me right now. What happened?
William's frantic voice echoed as soon as I answered. It seems William had a car accident on his way home from work. He was transported to a hospital from the scene. Given that he called me himself, he's probably conscious and alert. It didn't sound too urgent, but he was clearly panicking. I just sighed in disbelief. I thought to myself, isn't the hospital they're being transferred to the same one I was admitted to?
Well, okay, but you're gonna regret it. Shut up. Hurry up, you loser.
The call ended. Reluctantly, I began preparing to head to the hospital. Even though William seemed so indifferent when I was hospitalized, look at him now that he's the one in trouble. How selfish can one be? An idea suddenly crossed my mind. William needs some punishment. While I was going through the admission process, William called.
Hey! What are you doing? Get over here fast.
I'm at the hospital. I'm currently going through the admission process.
So, you're gonna come here after?
Nah, I'm going home.
What?
William responded in a dumbfounded tone. While looking over the hospital paperwork, I said into the phone.
I came to the hospital as you asked. I'll take care of your admission too. But I'm not going to your room. Are you kidding me? Hey, you're joking, right?
Nope. I bluntly replied.
There are rental pajamas available, and everything else you might need has been left with the nurse.
No need to worry.
Sarah, it's a serious situation for your husband. Don't you care at all?
William tried desperately to gain my sympathy. I couldn't help but smile. When it was my turn, it was a significant event for a wife. After all, it was William who ignored that.
I do think it's tough. Right? Then get over here now. But I think it's a good opportunity. You can have the same experience I had when I was in the hospital. Isn't it wonderful for a couple to go through the same thing? Cut it out.
William was furious, but Sarah hung up without a care. Soon after, William called again, but Sarah ignored it and finished her paperwork. On her way out, she noticed that William's doctor was the same one who had treated her during her hospitalization. The doctor knew about the way I was treated. Sure enough, that night, Sarah received a call from William complaining.
What did I do to that doctor? I can't understand why he's so cold to me.
Is that so? Having the same doctor, it really shows the mysterious bond between couples. That's what Sarah thought, but on the other end of the phone, William was desperately talking about the misfortune that had befallen him.
I can't stand this hospital. The nurses and the doctor treat me like a villain.
That sounds tough, Sarah replied. From what she heard, initially, the doctor and the nurses seemed to have a sharp attitude towards William. Gradually, the other patients in the same room also began to ignore William.
I don't belong in this hospital. All I can do is close the curtains and sleep all day. Meanwhile, the people in the room are talking behind my back.
Backbiting is awful, Sarah sympathized. Sarah remembered seeing William talking bad about her to a colleague after a few drinks. When William caught her gaze, he quickly hung up looking guilty, but never apologized. I wonder if he understands a bit of how I felt back then. William was hoping to be discharged as soon as possible. So much so, that when the day of his discharge was finally set, he eagerly called her.
Just 3 more days. I can be discharged in 3 days.
Oh, is that so?
You should be happier. Your husband is coming home.
Or more like a mountain of chores is coming home. That's what I thought, but I didn't say it out loud.
We borrowed the hospital bills from relatives. Well, when I get back to work, I gotta work hard to pay them back.
William ended the call just like that. He didn't seem concerned about my living expenses at all. I thought about dipping into my savings from my single days, but it might be better to just get back to work. I should save my savings for a rainy day. After that thought, I tilted my head.
What rainy day?
Then it hit me. I wouldn't struggle without William.
What have I been doing?
My decision after that was swift. Not just about work. I also started looking for a new place and planned to leave William. Luckily, I secured a job after the second interview. I found an apartment to move into. Then I guess, I got a call at the divorce attorney. I headed to the law firm. On the very day William was to be discharged, I was packing up our current apartment. All the furniture was moved to my new apartment. By the time William came home, the apartment should have been empty. I left a divorce attorney's business card in the door.
Goodbye, William.
I whispered and waved to the empty room. Starting life in my new place, after the initial feeling of relief, I began to think of William.
I wonder if William is eating properly.
I left in anger, but now that I've calmed down, I might have been a bit heartless. How must William have felt, coming home to no one welcoming him? I shared this feeling with my mom back home. On the phone, my mother let out a deep sigh.
I can't believe he did that to you. Do you think it was really bad?
I frowned at my mother's sigh. Of course it was, she said with emphasis.
If your father had treated me like that, what would you think, Sarah? I'd tell Dad to stop. Exactly.
That's why it was so terrible, my mother explained. After hanging up, I took a moment to reflect. Even without William, I'd be fine. But William? he'd definitely be at a loss. While I was in the hospital, our house was a complete mess. But what's the point of sticking so close to William? Even though he's never been one to match my pace. If William had just carried half of the load, I wouldn't have gotten hurt. It was those little things that built up, pushing me to act.
William's such a typical lowlife.
I laughed to myself. I know everything William did while I was in the hospital. I even thought of forgiving him. But the moment William called, I was filled with disgust. Picking up, I heard William's angry voice.
Sarah, where are you? Get back home now.
I hung up without a word. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand William's angry voice. It was unbearable. And then I realized. It's over between William and me. As expected, William called with a fury like no other.
Sarah, what do you think you're doing? I'm not gonna let you go. I have no intention of getting back together with you,
I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I realized once I distanced myself from William. He had been a burden to me. When I slipped in the parking lot, William didn't help me. I even had to call the ambulance myself. What's the reason to be with a man like that?
You probably think of me as some maid or something, William. If that's the case, why don't you hire me and pay? What are you talking about? You're my wife, aren't you?
William's voice became soft and cajoling. I was deceived by that voice once and ended up falling for him. He may seem gentle, but that's just on the surface. In reality, he's selfish and cold-hearted. I won't be fooled anymore.
Just because I'm your wife, you think you can get away with anything? Do you have any idea how I felt when I was hospitalized? Of course I do. You didn't even visit me. I was so embarrassed. It's more than just an embarrassment issue,
I replied, exasperated. That day, the tears I shed while eating a pear were tears of frustration. I can never forget the tears of that day.
You didn't care when I got hurt, did you, William? You were too busy with work to even visit me. If I don't work, you'd be left out in the cold, you know? I'm doing just fine.
I thought William's words sounded rather desperate. In reality, I had been living on my own income before we got married, and I'm managing just fine even after distancing from William. William was trying his best to make me feel indebted to him. He often reminded me how I lived off his earnings. I sighed.
If you want to take care of a woman that much, why don't you live with the woman you were close with when I was hospitalized? What the hell are you talking about?
William was visibly shaken. But I knew. For the past 6 months, William had been having an affair with a younger female coworker. He had claimed to be working late and on weekends, but his paychecks told a different story. Suspicious, I hired a detective and uncovered the truth.
You should have had her do the housework while I was hospitalized. She can't do any household chores.
It seemed William had given up on lying. He exclaimed in a flustered tone.
Yeah, that's right. But I can't marry her. She spends too much money, and she can't even do household chores properly. So, a woman's worth is based on whether she can do household chores? Of course it is,
William said with disdain.
You may not be a beauty, but you do the household chores properly. Well, you don't have much going for you as a husband either. What did you say?
I declared. I am looking coldly at the infuriated William.
I'm recording this conversation. Huh? I thought you'd get angry and show your true colors right away. That's why I picked up the phone. To leave evidence.
Yes, she needed evidence of William's choice of words for the divorce. She managed to get him to admit his affair too.
Now I just have to submit this to court. Wait. I misspoke. Come on, Sarah, let's redo this. Don't tell me what to do.
There was a momentum in my voice. Uncontainable anger made me say that.
You never once matched your pace with mine when we walked. That's what caused that injury. That was just you being clumsy and falling on your own.
William never really cared about me. Whenever I pointed out his mistakes, he would just lash out.
Goodbye, William.
I ended the call unilaterally. I didn't pick up his subsequent calls. I had the evidence I needed, so I didn't need to put up with any more unpleasantness. Afraid of the legal battle, William accepted the divorce from his end. The divorce papers arrived in the mail with William's signature, and I quickly submitted them to the courthouse. It seemed things didn't work out with his affair partner either, as William never remarried. As for me, I'm done with marriage. Just as I thought that, I received an invitation to a class reunion.
What should I do?
After some brief hesitation, I decided to attend the reunion. When was the last time I dressed up for myself? I excitedly went to the beauty salon and got my hair done. From necklace to nails, I dressed up to the nines and headed to the reunion. I instantly reconnected with my friends, and we had a blast just like old times.
By the way, are you married?
Nah, just got out of a relationship recently.
Oh.
My friend nodded and whispered in my ear.
Looks like Thomas is still single. Really?
I felt a slight flutter in my heart. Thomas was my first love and my first boyfriend. We ended up in a long-distance relationship when I went off to college, and it eventually just fizzled out. With those fleeting memories in my heart, I faced Thomas.
It's been a while, Sarah. Yeah. It's good to see you're doing well.
I was able to smile genuinely. When was the last time I smiled like that from the bottom of my heart, not just being polite? Even after the reunion, my connection with Thomas continued. After exchanging texts, we started to meet in person. It kind of feels like a date, doesn't it? I said, half-jokingly. Thomas looked at me with a more serious expression than usual.
It is a date. Huh? You didn't realize?
Thomas seemed taken aback. I was too shy to look straight into Thomas's eyes.
Oh, so it was a date.
From that day on, I started to think that maybe it wouldn't be so bad to be open to love again.